Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Brain That Rules Them All. This is an introduction to No Limits mind mapping. We're going to be covering a lot of ground, from the structure of a mega brain to examples to doing some very specific imports to get you to that ginormous brain and everything in between. So if you have any questions or specific example brains you want to see, I do, before we want to get started, want to remind you about the Q&A, which I'll monitor when Matt's presenting and Matt will monitor when I'm presenting. And we will reserve a good 15 to 20 minutes to review all the questions. So feel free to go ahead to type in your thoughts and your ideas. And my name is Shelley Hayduck, and I'd like to introduce Matt Caton, our Director of Customer Solutions.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. And before we dive into exactly what the mega brain is, I'd like to talk a little bit about no limits mind mapping and kind of why do I need this mega brain, and what problems does it solve? Why can't I just stick with my shared drive or Dropbox, or just upload a bunch of stuff to the folders? Well, what we're finding is current user interfaces are too linear to express your true thoughts. So what tends to happen, especially with people with large volumes of information or complex ideas, is you get these gargantuan file folders where you've got folder after folder, and if you're in a team, people can't find things, and as an individual, you'll lose documents, but more importantly, you're missing the big picture on things, and you're not really capturing ideas and all your great thoughts and activity in the structure where you're looking at information. So that's sort of where the whole idea of a mind map comes in. And if you don't know what a mind map is, no problem, we're going to tell you right now. And if you do, this slide is also for you, because I want to also talk a little bit about how we're different from what a conventional mind map is, so that you can get a sense of where we do play in the space. Mind maps were actually popularized by Tony Buzan, and it's really a lateralized branching of your ideas. So in this particular example, a lot of the mind maps are typically used for education and mapping out ideas, and this is one example, and you could add images and things like this. However, one of the challenges with a conventional mind map is that they are, in a sense, a hierarchical. So as you lateralize your ideas, yes, you can see them quite a bit better. You're still in that hierarchy where if I put one piece of information in on one branch, how do I connect it to that distant branch? And practically speaking, that limits the mind map because of the hierarchical nature. Eventually, large maps tend to become interconnected like our brains, and it just doesn't scale well. And so that's where we are, and that's why we actually are talking about going beyond mind mapping, of course, paying homage and loving mind maps and working with those programs as well, as Matt will show you, but moving beyond that and offering the brain spin on things, where we are a digital version of your mind. So with traditional mind maps, just in terms of that, that hierarchical organization that you also get your file folder structure is there. And of course, you need that to build your basic structure. But what we are moving towards to create the mega brain is associative connections. So once your content gets larger, you're going to want to see associative connections for that very powerful knowledge capture and information discovery. And so the next aspect of that is, of course, with mind map, we talked about that lateral categorization, and with the brain, we're considered more of a network. So you can think of it more, instead of a hierarchy, as a network. Now the two are very complementary. Now on the back end, we're also looking at a few different things here, and that's why we're going to show you how to share your brain and how to do import brains into other brains, because we're not just a single file architecture. So you don't just save your mind map and like attach it as an email, although you can email a brain. We actually have a database architecture. And that database architecture allows a vast amount of information to be stored and readily accessed. And it also enables us to do some very cool connections to dynamic connections to data sources on an enterprise level. So when you actually start your brain, it is a database of all your thoughts and ideas. So it's a different way of thinking about it, as opposed to I'm just creating this flow chart or mind map of my ideas. In this case, you're creating a database of kind of all your best thinking. So we like to think of it that way, and that's kind of going to be our approach for this call. And in terms of number of topics or ideas, there's no limit. In fact, we're going to go into Jerry Mikulski's brain. It has 500,000 links, I think over 360,000 thoughts. We're infinitely scalable. The traditional mind map tends to be more topic specific. And I do want to add, though, if you're just getting started, this is just kind of one approach. And it's a fun approach because it shows you how to import a lot of data and it gives you a sense of some grandiose brains. But if you prefer to go, here's my brain for the soccer club, here's my brain for writing, here's my brain for my recreational activities, that's fine too. So I also want to put that caveat out there for a lot of people that we are not, I mean, you can create the one brain for everything, but if that's too daunting, you can certainly start with a topic and even merge your brains or copy thoughts, and we can cover that. So what we're finding in terms of like how you get there, if you just download the software, you've got maybe a topical brain, what are sort of the phases that get you to this space of mega brain? We find that in general, what our users are doing is the first phase is efficiency and just mind mapping, where they're connecting topics and sort of organizing ideas, visualizing kind of different ideas, or maybe even content or files that they have. And then once you do that, you get a few thoughts and categories in your brain. You can start to interconnect ideas and get more deeply into a topic. So if I'm creating a brain on health, I can go ahead and start building that content really robustly. And then finally, once that robust content happens, you'll notice the brain actually takes on a personality or flavor. When somebody shows you their brain, it's not just like looking at a zipped file of a bunch of folders or your company network drive. It's pretty interesting because you can see what's connected to what, how they organize things, what's associated. They tend to embellish with personal ideas and tags and notes. So that brain really becomes the digital identity. And at that level, that's where we're actually talking about what we like to call the mind meld, where no, you can't see my brain, or if anything happened to this brain, I don't know what I'd do. And your brain literally becomes an extension of your identity. If you publish, it can actually become your digital identity, as it is the case for Jerry Mikulski, where he has a very popular brain. Or we also have Mark Trexler, who has a huge brain on climate change too. Like that becomes the identity of the organization or of the creator, and from there it just becomes quite fabulous and magical in a lot of ways. So that's kind of the big overview, the conceptual overview. In terms of getting into the steps, I'm not going to spend too much time on this because we're going to go ahead and actually and get into the brain. And there are some organizational tactics that we'll cover as well in terms of how to identify key themes, pinning certain thoughts, breadth versus depth, when to categorize, how to import, and also creating thought types and tags. And we'll cover a lot of this. And if there is stuff like this that we haven't covered, that'll be also a great time for Q&A. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and close the presentation and open a brain. And I'm going to start with the my brain, and I'm going to go back up to this home thought. And pieces of information in the brain are, of course, what we call thoughts. So every time I click on a thought, that's going to trigger all related pieces of information. That's where we're different. We will get into some different views, but if you are actually coming from, you've built 10 mind maps in a different program, you might be wondering, whoa, I clicked on this thought and everything moved. What's going on? Well, the reason we do that is to enable infinite scalability. So I can literally visually navigate through a very large data set. But beyond that, it always helps me to see my relationships relative to my current focus. So in the standard mind map, it doesn't move one area of focus, which is usually the topic of the map. So if this was a mind map, it would just be my brain. But in this case, I'm already in my business universe. And if I click further, which I'm going to do, I'm going to go into business development. Well, now I'm in my business development universe, and I can go into, launching things like my business expansion and all this kind of stuff. And as I click downward, these are the subcategories. So I also want to clarify, as you build your brain, you don't just want to create a bunch of spaghetti and, oh, we're a network, link anything to anything. You want your basic hierarchical structure. So you want to start out with your basic categories. And as I've done in this, and as you start to drill down, you'll notice that things sort of fit into more than one bucket, so to speak. So we got to business expansion from business development, right? And so here's all the things I actually brainstormed that I want to do to expand my business. I want to hire more reps. I want to, have tech partnerships, acquire a company, blah, blah, blah. So these are all different things that I'm thinking about. But this is not only for business development. I also have a section in this brain called 2018 goals. So I can get to this information from either places. So you'll find a piece of information will often live in many different categories. And with the brain, you can make as many categories if you want. If this business expansion, for instance, affects operations, I can go ahead and link it to operations. And now you can see it's under 3 different categories. And the way I link things can also vary. In this case, maybe business expansions is just a very cool idea. It's not really part of the general operations MO of this company. So in this case, I'll just put business expansion to the left. And this is our area for jump thoughts, things that are tangentially related. So I've got the people who run operations, but all the main operations projects are children, subcategories, and then my business expansion I just have as a jump thought there. And then, of course, to the right, we have siblings. So all the other departments that are under my business are appearing to the right. So you've got your sibling zone, you've got your subcategories, and you've got your jump thoughts. So where the more, I guess, lateralized connectivity comes in is if you're creating jumps to different areas or different information sets, or when you're adding multiple parents to something. If I want to actually make this a division of the business expansion, maybe business expansion is what's really taking over my brain. So now I've just effectively sort of reconfigured the way I'm seeing this, and I can actually go ahead and also take this business expansion thought and go back to my business and put it right at the top. So one of the interesting things about a brain is you can see where things can sort of live in multiple places without duplication. Now I've actually decided that I have that right with my business, or if it's actually affecting my life such that I need it really at the top of my brain, I've just moved it there now. And I'm just thinking about me in general. This is my brain. My business expansion is, of course, right there. And of course, if I don't like that, I can just unlink this and go ahead and change that connection as well. So I'm going to unlink that. I don't need it that high up in my brain. So I just wanted to give you a sense of how connections work. In terms of the architecture of a brain, what we suggest, and we actually have the My Brain template on our homepage that you can use, is starting with, if you want to create that single brain, what a lot of people do is start with their business area, and that can be just a mega brain in and of itself, as well as a personal area also. So business people tend to kind of understand, but just in terms of the way you'd start mapping that, you'd want to have thoughts too. A nice way to do it is for your teams, your active projects, and or your departments. So here, as I'm building my business brain, I'm actually kind of thinking downward. And let me go ahead and click on active projects. So we're in active projects now. And this is an area in your mega brain where you'd actually want to put all your key projects. These are things that keep you up at night. It could be your 2018 investments, your team meetings. You could even have old stuff here. Like I've got an old link to something that happened in 2014, but it's such a great reference, it's still there. Or maybe it's the client that you're working on with all the information. So active projects is a good area. And this is another example of how we're moving beyond that hierarchy, because if I were in a folder system, I could just have one folder that says active projects, and therein would all these other projects lie. But in the brain, we have that wonderful advantage of these interconnections. So in addition to having one particular thought in my active category, active projects, I've got my 2018 stuff in my investments area. And you can see, so now I'm moving into the personal space, and this is where also you're going to be taking a lot of notes. We're actually an amazing note-taking software. We can cover a little bit about note-taking where we have different styles. You know, I can do like checklists or 1, 2, 3, check my bank account, pick a new stock, sell a new stock, that sort of thing. And it's just fabulous. So if you are just looking to take a bunch of notes, a lot of people get started with the brain as a visual note-taking tool. And then from there, that's basically their knowledge base. That is their idea capture. So just a little bit of a word on that. And then, of course, what we also want to talk about is content. Got to get to that because we're going to be spending a lot of time on content. So basically, each thought in the brain can have any number of attachments, and some of this stuff is pretty old links, so I might move to a different area of this brain. Oh, this one will work. But each thought, in this case, can have a URL or a document, and you can have as many. So in this case, I'm under bull markets, and here's a link to a website called Motley Fool. And each one of these sites actually appears in the content window. So we're not just creating a brain of ideas. You can have your notes, your documents, and your web pages all integrated. So it sort of becomes like your remote control for your information. So for instance, if you're working with Wells Fargo investments, you know, and that's a login page, but you can see I've got links to the NASDAQ stock market here, and that's actually loading in the content area. And that gives me nice access to different things. And I can come in here and just go ahead. And if I want to go ahead and maybe launch, I'm going to create a new web page here. I can actually drag and drop things and add to these particular websites. So let me go ahead and go to options. I'm actually going to search the web for, it'll actually launch, search web will launch your active thought, but in this case I want to say, I'm going to say investment ideas. Okay, and I'm actually going to go out to the web and do a search. So now it's actually launching my browser, and probably I'm going to go to the news area, and there's a site also from the NASDAQ on different ideas, investment highlights. And of course, I just want to say these are just ideas. We're not making any statements. Or if you see anything that I am or not investing in, this is just an example. But you can see it's a personal brain, so it's got all kinds of things that are interesting. So let me go back to my 2018, and this is where search is so powerful in the MegaBrain, because I just realized that I don't need all this. I just want to go to my 2018 investments. So I just click on 2018 and boom, there's investments. So that's where I'm going to put the new information on Zach's ideas for investments. So all I'm going to do is simply drag and drop that into my brain, and now you can see it's gone ahead and it's made a connection. And I can go ahead and change this. If I click on this URL, sometimes the site has a label where you can switch them, or in this case, I can just change it to Zach's investment ideas. These sites are a little bit more tricky in terms of labeling because this is a actual logged in site. That's why that didn't appear, but you can actually see that I've got that site now, and I've got the investment idea content appearing as well under my 2018 investments. And I can go ahead and I'll just add a few more. And this is really how the knowledge base grows. So I'm going to go back to actually the news section here. And let's do something different other than NASDAQ news. Let's go to the Sydney Morning Herald. Let's get a different perspective on investment. So I want to add this site from the Sydney Morning Herald. So again, I'm simply going to drag and drop this into my brain. And now I've got that link And the nice thing about that is it can easily click on that link, and I have all the other references right over here, but I can still view this web page quite nicely. And I don't know about you, I have so much great reading that I want to do, but I don't have time to do it. So I actually put stuff in my brain, and then sometimes I'll even have, I have a to read category where I can label it to read as well, and it's in its related topic. So I love this section as well. So I've got in my 2018 investments. So when I'm thinking about my investments, I'm going to go to that interesting article on, you know, the Australian perspective. But if I don't have time to read that right now, and I've got all kinds of things in here from just, and this is what I've stolen this category from Jerry's brain, which I'm going to show you. It's called Top of My Mind. So these are things in my brain. I have this category as a jump, and just stuff that I'm literally very interested in. Like I've got stuff on things to buy. Like if you're researching, you know, buying a new car, for instance, or it's Christmas and you even want to put like birthday gifts, you know, your brain can be, you know, just stuff like that, like which vacuum cleaner is the quietest. It doesn't always have to be, you know, rocket science or the next best thing. But I mean, of course, it can be as well. Like I've got stuff on competitors and advertising, but this need to read section, when I'm adding URLs that I haven't read yet, but I want to, that's going to go in here. And of course, when I'm done reading it, I can just unlink it, and, you know, I can unlink it with this link and change the category, but I'm going to leave that for now. So that's a little bit on an example of a MegaBrain. What I want to do is also just quickly show you a bit more on importing as well, since we're in this brain. So of course I've got a operations folder here, and I've got some budget. So maybe this is company investing. So in this case, my financial plan will influence my 2018 investments. So all I have to do is drag and drop that, and that creates a new thought in my brain. So I'm not just adding web pages and ideas. I've actually got a document now in my brain, and I can continue to do that. In fact, if I want to go ahead and drag and drop a full document or folder, I can do that. So maybe in 2018 goals, I just want to put a link to my entire operations folder. I can actually come in here and do that, and now I've got that folder internally. But there's also other ways that you can do. We have some wonderful importing options. I'm actually going to forget this. And if I go up to File and I select Import here, I could actually import a full folder. So in this case, if I want to grab everything from human resources to hot projects and put it in my brain, I can simply just select to import the folder. And then what I'm going to do is just select the folder here. So let me go ahead and select that operations folder. And of course, I can do a subfolder, hit OK, and it's actually going to go ahead. Oh, and I want to create it. I want to add to this brain. This is the other thing. Just remember this top area. A lot of times it's going to assume if you're importing a large folder, you might want to create a new brain, and you can do that right from the import menu if you're in another brain. But in this case, I just want to add it, and I want to add it to my 2018 goals. So that's what I've selected there. And I'm going to go ahead and hit import. And it's not undone. I'm totally fine with that. I want to get this information in there. And boom, you can see, here we go. We've got operations in the brain. And this is just a good example, too, how you can see how different it becomes in the brain. And now I've got documents attached. And I'll show you how the different views of documents. So for instance, Hot Projects had 3 different documents in it, in this folder. Right? Okay, and so here these documents are in the brain. So I've got the company press release that I can click on, and I've got the new product launch. Actually, if you're on the Mac, these documents will auto preview. If they were PDFs, they would auto preview anyway, and then URLs auto preview. But what's nice is I can add notes. So now that I've got this Hot Projects folder in my brain, I can say, these are my key ideas. And from here, I might want to link this to my active projects, because, I mean, hot projects and active projects. So I can link by selecting the pin, and doing it that way and making a connection. So now I've got my hot projects content over here, and that's where I can decide, since it's new, do I want to leave the content there or move it below? So hot projects is now under my active projects area, as well as this operations folder that I've just added to the brain. And this is actually about, this particular folder was really about operations spending. So I can, of course, rename it. I've got my operations spending thought, and you can see the past thought list moving here. And now I actually want to go back to my business area, and I want to put it under my basic operations section as well. So I can drag a link from this operations and link it to my operations spending, the new information that I just added. And now you can see that I've got that there. So this folder is gone to 2018 goals, operations spending. There's another piece of content that's now cross-connected. So rather than this sort of just being isolated on my desktop, you can see I've already kind of taken notes, made connections. The other thing we haven't talked about is adding thought tags and types. So if I actually have want to create a thought type or set a thought type, I can go ahead and do this. And I've got different thought types for anything from a competitive project to just a huge project. So if this is a green lighted project, a thought type, I can have that appear. And then it's got its own color icon. And if I actually want to come in here and set some tags, I can do that as well. Maybe all this is I want to tag this as high investment. I can go ahead and do that. And maybe I want to tag this as an urgent task. So I've gone ahead and I've got some tags there. And so now I can see that tag appearing. And tags are great because they're basically additional metadata you can put on your thoughts. And then there's a section here for tags. So for instance, if I want to see everything in my brain, which is tagged as high investment, all I have to do is click on high investment, and here's everything that pops up. So that acquisition of a company, hiring a new web design firm, this new hire, Greg. And the other thing about Greg is he's got lots of tags on him as well. We've actually tagged Greg, and if I mouse over, I can see, or I can actually look at the tags area, that he is a database program, a great salesperson, and high investment, and a top tier candidate. He's a candidate that we're looking at for an engineering position. So tags will just give you lots of ways to add and discover information. So, and how it differs from a thought type. Thought type, you can only have one thought type per thought, and it becomes, you add color and icon to typically a thought type. So here I've got a hot topic. This is a thought type. A tag, you can have multiple tags per thought. So if I go ahead and I'll just show you, let me go to critical writing project. You know, you can see a lot of these thoughts have the little tag icon, 3 or more different tags. And tags are really just additional attributes that you might want to add to help you find things in your brain. So that's the way tags work. And tags and thought types are very important as your brain grows, because it's just another way to add meaning, to get that semantic network really flowing in your brain. And the other aspect of a MegaBrain that is important is pins. So you'll notice at the top of my screen, there's some fixed thoughts. The bottom area is our past thought list, and this moves. This is literally a breadcrumb trail of everything that you've clicked on, because I know sometimes people will say, you know, I've got this really large brain, or how do I navigate a large brain, or I can't, you know, how do I find things? Well, first of all, you have the search. You can literally type in anything and, you know, start searching. But beyond that, you have your pins. So I've got a pin for my getting things done area, which is a David Allen theory of management, and I've got pinned all my marketing resources, and I've also pinned my business expansions, and I can just move to these areas, and of course active projects very quickly. And you know, it just really shows you how great the brain is. In terms of viewing too, I like to have my brain top bottom, but the default is to the side. This works great if you have a lot of content that you want to look at. So here, you know, you can see these are all different marketing sites that I put in as marketing resources. And it's really nice to just see them all together So I can decide which one is relevant for my project. And of course, if I click on one, I've got the preview right there. So there's everything from Gladwell.com to PR Newswire that launches PR, and then Fast Company. But it's just a great way to look at content. And of course, anything that I see in here, I can always come and add a note too. So this is a progressive plan for marketing, or whatever I want to say, and then I've got my idea attached to the article or the site, and I can decide whether I want to see this or this. And of course you can do split screen and all kinds of things too, and we can cover that in the Q&A. So that's an overview of the MegaBrain. Before I pass presenter to Matt to cover more on importing and thought creation, I'm going to go ahead and show you Jerry's brain. And Jerry's brain, which I have a link right here, is actually one of the largest publicly published brains. And we can actually send everyone a link to this. There is a shorter URL that to get to Jerry's brain. I think it's jerrysbrain.com, but I'll verify with Matt before I launch that. But this is the actual link. And he's got everything on it in this brain. I'll just make it large, from his beliefs, which are very extensive, as you can see, to words he loves, which is everything from mindfulness to play to practice to serendipity. And of course, clicking on any area in Jerry's brain leads to other things. So serendipity is actually under chance, all kinds of, I think, words I love, and 3 sources of innovation. And under there, he's got all kinds of interesting articles, and you can actually see he's got the link to what serendipity is in the content area. It's a link from the Wikipedia. And, you can continue to kind of move to different areas as well. So in this particular brain, he's got a few more areas and thoughts. Let's just go ahead, and I'm going to go into his section on amateurs and go ahead and pull this down. And let me just go ahead and go up to ordinary people. And then he's got an area on types of people. And this is a section he has on people, where he's got all kinds of things in here. So it's just a very interesting brain that's available that you can look at. And he also has all kinds of things on investment and technology too. So this is it gets pretty interesting. So let me go ahead and, for instance, go over to just different companies. Now he's looking at NetSuite, which is small business services, and CNRN. So he's got a whole section on small business resources, but you can see how this keeps going forever. So go ahead and look at this brain, and we'll actually get the link in the Q&A. There is a shorter link to this that you can see. And I think with that, I've covered a lot. Okay, well, sounds good. So I think what I'm going to do now, since we're at the midway point, is I am going to now pass presenter over to you, Matt, unless anyone has any burning questions on anything I've shown, so that we can continue our import palooza, and Matt can go ahead and show you how to do some other importing options here.
Excellent, and I'll turn on my camera as well. So I'm going to show off a couple of features of having a very large brain that I want to make everyone aware of before I jump back into more import examples. And everyone, just so you know, thank you for all the questions that are coming in. We've got a lot of questions coming in. I'm doing my best to keep up. They're coming in quite rapidly. So during the QA, yeah, we'll answer anything that we don't get to. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible. But really quickly, let me share with you one option that you have in a very large brain for reviewing that data and looking through that content in a very large brain that you've created. Many of us, all of us at the Brain have had the same brain since the release of the Brain 1.0 over 20 years ago. So this is the same data set upgraded through Brain releases over time. So I've got 20 years worth of data, and the brain never forgets. Your digital brain never forgets. My organic brain, I can't say the same. So therefore, we've got a lot of great reporting features. And the reports in the brain allow you to parse through your data and your content to find exactly what you're looking for. Shelley had a great example. She mentioned, that people write in from time to time, oh, my brain is getting bigger and bigger. Am I going to be able to find everything? Yes, you certainly will. Number one, you've created that data, typically on a thought-by-thought basis. But also, you can run a search within the brain. You can see that if I just run a quick search for my name, Matt, you can see that I'm getting search results back with wherever Matt shows up in a thought name, a link name, or an event in the brain's built-in calendar. And then down below are all of the documents that contain the word Matt. And you can see I've got quite a few documents that contain, obviously, my name, Matt, showing up there in my brain. So I can open up the report to filter that content. And there's a few different ways you can get to your reports within the brain. Obviously, I can click on View and select Report. But right here next to the search box, there's a button to toggle on and off the report. So the report, really quickly, is an alphabetical listing of all the thoughts in your brain. And of course, I can click on any one of those. Three Kings tart is a tart that my wife makes every year, sort of a traditional French tart. And that's in the recipe areas under the area I have for my wife in my brain. And I can click down the 10-day temp for the weather status for Quaking Aspen, a popular campground that I go to in California. Anytime I find a little nugget of information out there on the web that is going to be useful, again, to me in the future, notice I'll just drop it there into the notes. I'll copy and paste from a web page, drop it into the notes, or just drag and drop that URL right into the brain to quickly create a thought. If I've got additional information, Quaking Aspen, I always want to remember, for example, in Quaking Aspen, I know I'm going to be fly fishing. So I can quickly create a new thought in my brain at any time. And this is to Shelley's point of just thought creation. It's so easy just to click and drag off of a gate. Every thought in the brain is three small gates: the parent gate up above, the child gates or subcategories down below, and the jump gate, something that's related to the active thought over on the left. And so if I want to just be reminded of the rules of fly fishing and when camping in Quaking Aspen, I'll simply type in that content. And in a very large brain, let's say I just generalize and call this thought fishing. I'm going to type in the word fish, and notice my brain is reminding me of all the thoughts that already exist that contain whatever content it is that I've typed in so far. So I do a lot of fishing, I do a lot of cooking, and obviously I've got a lot of thoughts that contain the word fish. This is a very large brain. There's thousands of thoughts. I think we saw over on the right, 3,400 thoughts in my personal sort of recreational brain. So if I want to narrow this down to fly fishing, I can narrow that down, and you can see it narrows that down quite extensively. And Quaking Aspen, I will be fly fishing, so I'll double click and link to that existing thought. Rather than creating a new thought, I'll just link to my existing content on fly fishing. So I'm reminded when I go camping here, I'm probably going to want to do a little fishing as well. And I can get over to that area of my brain to look up resources or equipment rental or whatever it is that I need in that area. So, and I got there very quickly by just simply clicking on one of the thoughts in my reports. So I can click on any one of those to activate that thought and navigate it over in the brain. Or I can filter this report. And there's many different ways to filter. You saw Shelley was creating thought tags and types. If I want to see all thoughts of a particular tag and type, all right, show me all of my VW thoughts. So I'm repairing an old VW bus. And so I say, all right, show me all thoughts that are tagged VW. And I've got some subcategories down below. You can see there are 32 thoughts that are tagged VW. And I can click to go directly to that thought in that area of my brain. More extensive searches or filters of the reports, I should say, not just by thought types and tags, but also by file types. If I'm looking for a recent Word document, so I'm going to say thought type, oops, there we go, thought by attachment. You can see I have 686 thoughts with attachments. But if I'm only looking for maybe an Excel spreadsheet, .xls, and I refresh, you can see I'm now down to just 9 thoughts. And if I want to find only files, Excel spreadsheets that I've modified within the past 2 or 3 months, again, I can specify a date range. So my time frame is modified in the past few months. I'll say since January 1st, now I'm down to 4. So I've got a couple of expense reports that I make for myself and my 2018 running schedule. So a variety of different Excel spreadsheets in my brain that I've recently modified. So a lot of different ways to modify and search and filter and find content within your brain with those reports. And I've really only scratched the surface. You can see there's a lot of different drop-down menus to really find. We've got a lot of questions about importing internal attachments versus external attachments. If I want to find all attachments, let me just clear this report. I'll click on Reset. And I want to find all external attachments. I'm going to sync my brain to the cloud and be accessing my brain from another computer while I'm traveling on holiday. So I won't be here at my desktop here in my office. So when I sync my brain to the cloud, all the internal attachments are available from the Brain cloud, but external attachments are just shortcuts to files that are here on my operating system or on my internal network. So all attachments, type external attachments. Now, before I click on this button, I want to specify, I typically have all of my attachments internal inside my brain because I do like to have access. So I'm hoping I see 0 external attachments. We'll find out. External attachments. Oh, I've got quite a few actually. So these are links to files that are local here on my local machine. When I sync my brain to the cloud, I won't have access to these files. Looks like some United flight ticket information that I've linked into the brain, some things for my kitchen, etc. So I can review this content. I can click and go to that thought in the brain and find that information that is just a shortcut to a thought and decide whether I want to move that in or not before I sync and access my brain from the cloud. So that is just a high-level overview of all the features that are available in the reports for those large brains that you're going to be creating. Now, obviously, we can create those brains thought by thought. That brain that Shelley shared with you, the Jerry Mikowski brain, which is available online for you to browse through at jerrysbrain.com. That was created by Jerry Mikowski, thought by thought, one thought at a time, no database import or file import to create that particular brain. So over time, he's closing in on 1 million thoughts in that brain, created one thought at a time. Let's speed up that process. Let's create a brain very quickly. And I'm going to start with one of our templates. And I shared this in the questions that were coming in earlier when Shelley was demoing. On our website, if you go to under the Learn area, there's a link for applications. So the shortcut URL is thebrain.com/apps, APPS. And here are a variety of different topics with brains that Shelley and I have demoed, and a sample of that brain. And even in today's brain, I am going to be importing this brain right here on the apps page. You can see is a sample brain that we've created for you with a template for just keeping track of both personal and work-related information. It's called One Brain for Everything. I'm going to now import this brain zip into my brain or into my local application. You can see I've got a lot of different brains. If I click on my brain tab, I've got many topic-specific brains that I go in and out of for demos or for sharing with other people or for different purposes. I'm going to create a new brain now from scratch. So I'll just click on the plus sign and select to import. Now, while I'm here, I'm going to be visiting this area quite often. Someone already asked, how do I import my version 8 brain? And right here at the top, you can, that's the default that's highlighted. You can import a .brain file or a brain zip, that's the archive format for version 8, into a brain that you have open. If I open up my Laura Bloom brain, I can import into that brain. In this case, I'm going to create a new brain from scratch. I am going to select brain zip that I've downloaded from that website, called the One Brain. So there's One Brain brain zip. I'll say open. And it sort of scans through the brain data, make sure everything is formatted. And yes, I want to open this brain. And here it is. You can see that was pretty fast. Now, this brain, like I said, is just a sample brain, sort of can be the skeleton for you to start connecting all of your information to if you're just getting started with the brain. Or it can be a sandbox. I want to test out some features. I want to sample import some files and documents before I commit to the brain software. You can certainly do that with sample brains. So here I am in this brain. I'll open up the reports right away. You can see that imported 127 different thoughts. They've got thought types, thought tags that you can delete, modify, create, or add on to reflect your own business or your own personal life. So under my work, you can see I've got a lot of sample areas. It's really vanilla content that you can make your own. You can rename this or add your own content down below, but a lot of different areas down below. Let's say I'm going to be creating my own sort of hobby business. So I'm going to create a jump thought off of my work. I'll just call it side business. And let's say I'm going to start a furniture company on the side. So away from my digital technical work that I do on the side, I'm creating this fantastic new furniture company. And I've already created an outline of this company in another piece of mind mapping software. So let's go ahead and open up my sample maps. And herein, you may be familiar with FreeMind. So FreeMind is that classical sort of mind mapping type structure, which does have its drawbacks. Obviously, this is sort of the structure you may think of when you think of a mind map. Some of the drawbacks that I find with the typical mind map structure is I'm seeing everything at one time. And as this brain continues to grow, think of Jerry Mikowski's brain in this view, close to 1 million thoughts all on the screen at one time. It's hard to really center in and draw my focus. You know, I really just want to know about this part shortage and everything that it's about to be connected to. I don't need to know about the history of the company, et cetera. Now, you can filter this view. There's some little plus and minus signs up above, but notice they don't work. Nothing happens until you select the starting thought, and then I can minimize down or maximize up from that one thought. So this is a mind map that's all about Laura Bloom Furniture. I really want to focus on the part shortage, and you can see when I click on plus minus, it doesn't do anything. So I'm sort of stuck with this all or nothing view. Let's bring this into the brain. We can start really making some cross connections from here and sort of have a different focus on the structure of the brain or of the mind map that I've created from the brain interface. So let's go ahead and I'll leave that open because I'm going to come back to it in a second. I'm going to click once again on File and Import. And now we will select, you can see I can bring in a mind map. Today I chose Mind Manager. I'll select Mind Manager and select the file, that Laura Bloom Furniture. And also, before I click on Import, I want to click this radio button. I'm adding this information into my currently open brain. Rather than creating a new brain database of this map, I'm importing this FreeMind into an existing brain. So two different options for you to choose from. I'm adding this one into my one brain for it all, and I'll go ahead and select import. It says, there's a warning message saying, hey, you can't undo this. You actually can. The brain has a really great undo feature. If I go up to, excuse me, there it is, edit, I've got undo create thought. So I can undo that entire thought creation structure with one simple click. But here it is. It's the same brain, Laura Bloom Furniture, with all of, if I go down to resources, as I said earlier, I really want to look into that part shortage under my metal fasteners. So now I can start connecting this very easily to other thoughts. This part shortage is affecting my order from the Thompsons. So I start typing in a few letters, there's the Thompsons. Also one of the chairs, or my entire line of chairs that I'm making. I'll start typing in chair. It's affecting the old chair number 12, as well as my dining room chairs need these fasteners. So the part shortage is affecting a few open orders that I have with a customer and with some utilities that I'm building. If I were to do that same thing, that same process over here in Mind Manager, let's see, I think I first select part shortage and then the Thompsons are here. So I shift click, there we go. Now I right click and now I can insert a graphical link. And this also affects some chairs. You can see it takes just a little bit of, with some moderate effort. Oh, wrong one, so I need to start over. Part shortage, and there it is, old chair number 12. Right click, insert. So with some degree of effort, I can draw those links in my brain, but my part shortage affects these things. My customers have ordered these other items. This is going to be a spaghetti factory by the time I'm done. Whereas with the brain's view, obviously I can just simply look at the part shortage. If I want to focus on the chairs that the Perkins have recently ordered, I'll link those to, again, I just type in the name, the Ellis armchair they've ordered, and the old chair number 12. So I get a better view and have more understanding. Here's individual customers that I have. I'm focused on their orders. If I want to look just at the part shortage, I can focus just on that. Now, with the brain, you also have, I think, the best of both worlds. Let's say you really like that one high scale overview of all of your content, the classic mind map. I am going to minimize my notes area. I haven't really talked about notes and attachments too much, so let's go ahead and minimize that. I'm just focused on the structure of my business. And let's go from the normal view into the mind map view. So now I'm going to shrink this down just a little bit. You can see I've got a little sliding scale up above. So here's my Laura Bloom furniture. And anytime I click on the plus sign, I can decide how far out I want to expand this view. And obviously it depends on screen real estate, how much real estate, or what size your monitor is, or how many layers deep you want to expand and view. You can always adjust and resize the structure of your brain. And there, it's the same view. I get that same classic mind map view of how my business is fitting together. It's really great for meetings, for presentations, to show all the steps of a process and follow the different types of connections. And of course, when I hover over, I can see being highlighted are the distant links that the part shortage has and who they're affecting. But obviously, I've got the option at any time to just switch right back to that classic normal view in the brain, where you're just viewing the current active thought in one generation away. Let's do one more import before we see what additional questions we have. I want to import an Excel spreadsheet. Now, an Excel spreadsheet allows you to create, and it works in much the same way as a Word document outline, tab delineated outline. I like importing from Excel spreadsheets from time to time. I'll sort of sit down and build out the complex structure of a process. If I'm not starting from the brain, typically maybe I might go in and create, phase 1 has these steps, phase 2 has these steps, et cetera, in an Excel spreadsheet, or receive that information from another department. My engineering team really loves to put together Excel spreadsheets and outlines of projects from time to time, and I can import those right into the brain to get a nice visualization of how it works. So under resources, I've got this area called just wood, cherry wood that I'm purchasing, quarter sawn, and maybe I want another area for my research. So I'll create a jump thought for research. Let me change the scale of my thoughts here just a bit and bring back the notes in case I want to jot down a quick note. So under research, I've already done this research with an Excel spreadsheet. Let's first take a look at it in Excel. So here are my maps and my wood research Excel spreadsheet. There it is. So just different wood species, the benefits and cost analysis and things like that are going to be in this document. So I've created this Excel spreadsheet, and notice that I can simply highlight those cells. Now, there's much that you can do with these cells. You can also add a couple of different symbols, a pipe symbol, a plus symbol for adding a URL. Let's say for, we'll say poplar wood. I want to also add, let's see if I can do this really quickly. I'll insert a line. And under poplar, let's say I'm getting this at plus www http dot purchase, or how about Rockler Hardware? That's a woodworking website, so rockler.com. So notice I just add a little plus sign. We're going to come back to that thought, and I'll show you exactly what that does. But I'm going to go ahead and select this content and copy. So that's copied onto my clipboard. The brain recognizes when you copy a tab delineated list or properly formatted Excel spreadsheet. And notice when I right click, the brain presents me with pasting an outline as thoughts. So I'll go ahead and select that. And it's reading the data. It takes just a moment to paste it in. And there it is, wood species qualifications. So hardwoods and softwoods. I believe under softwoods, there's popular. I've got a couple of different child thoughts. And there on the cheap is a link to Rockler Woodworking. So that plus sign told the outline, hey, this is a web attachment. So attach this URL as a web. So there's a few different options. If you want to see the full list, you can actually see it. It's built right into the brain. If I click on File, Import, and select the option for a text outline, there it is. So you can see a plus sign will add as a web link. A pipe will add as a label for the thought when you hover over the thought. And a dash will add notes. So I can have pre-populated notes. I've spoken with a couple of people that really, really like these students, actually, that will take notes, digital notes on in a classroom or something like that, and then just really quickly import those notes back into their brain. So if they're not taking their laptop with them and just writing it into the brain itself during the class. So a lot of different import capabilities for you as well. So I just wanted to share some of those examples really quickly and a few of the different views. And with that, Shelley, what type of questions? We had some great questions coming in earlier.
What we are going to do now is we are going to go into Q&A. We're going to go 15 minutes into overtime because we have to do our 10 to 15 minute Q&A. And actually, we've answered a lot, and I've said a lot of demos. So a question that has come back, I'm sorry I can't mention the name of the people, but I remember the question. A lot of people are asking, I saw you drag and drop that document. I don't want to create a copy of that document. That takes up hard drive space. Can I have the document as a shortcut or move it in? So I mentioned in the Q&A, and I'd love for you to show this to everyone, Matt, that you can change the preferences in your drag and drop. So if you'd rather just have a bunch of files you want moved in, you can do that. You can have them copied or as shortcuts. So that you can sort of do whatever works for you. So I want people to be aware of that option as it has popped up from a few different people there.
Sure. So I clicked on options and then preferences. Mac user would click on TheBrain preferences, but that will take you to your preferences where you can really modify to make the brain work for your environment. There's tons of keyboard shortcuts that you can select from in here, change the look and feel, whether, content automatically previews when you mouse over the thought, etc. A lot of those settings, but the one in particular that we're focused on the UI tab, you can specify how you want the brain to behave when you drag and drop into the brain. So is that automatically, and this is the default, to copy that file into the brain. So you'll still have the original .doc file, and now you've got a copy of that file inside your brain. If you want to move that file every time you drag and drop, you've decided you're going to commit to using and accessing your data from within the brain. This is typically my default. I change over to move files into the brain. In some scenarios, and I saw that question come up too, they like their existing structure, or maybe that existing structure, other people have access to it on a network. So therefore, those files are being updated outside of the brain by other forces or other colleagues, and then you just want a quick and easy link to get to your X drive or whatever the case may be. Change your default link to files. Then when you drag and drop, you're just creating a shortcut back to that original file. And finally, once again, you can create a keyboard shortcut to override whatever shortcut or whatever default or setting you have. So I'm going to leave mine on copy files into the brain, but I'm just going to grab this, and I'm not going to import this Mind Manager file. I just want a link to that file in my brain. I click on the Alt key and drag and drop this weekly status meeting, and the signs are subtle. There's a little black arrow icon that's telling me that's a shortcut. I overrode the copy file into the brain. This is telling me that's a shortcut back to the Mind Manager file. And on the properties over in the content area, I can see this file resides on my C drive inside eSolutions Maps directory. So a lot of different settings to really customize the brain to make it work best for your environment.
All right, great. And then another question was about copying thoughts. I guess Brendan, he has a brain. How do you copy multiple thoughts? I've tried on the Brain 9, but it only lets me copy one. So that's done through mass selective thoughts.
Yeah.
And then copying. And that actually fits into Jocelyn's question as well. Jocelyn has kind of the opposite, a larger brain, but she only wants to share like a portion of the brain.
Oh,
so the
great.
way you do that is you want to copy that set of thoughts into a new brain. So if we could cover that and kind of hit both Brendan and Jocelyn's question, that would be great.
Sure, because the process is the same for both individuals, whether you're just copying the thoughts to paste into another brain that you already have, or to copy those thoughts and paste into a new brain that you'll be sharing with others. When you share a brain, if I sync this brain to the cloud and I give Shelly access, she'll have access to the entire brain, with the exception of if I give her read-only access to this brain, the only thought she would not be able to see is a thought that I right-click on and select to make that thought private. It gets a little lock icon. When I share this brain and give anyone the online URL, they will not see this weekly status November 19th. Only I see that because it's private. Now, that could be pretty meticulous to do if you've got just a branch or an area of your brain you want to share with others, but the majority of thoughts would have to be private. That could be pretty tedious to go through. You can mass select and make them private, but what you probably want to do in that scenario is create another brain that gets shared with your colleagues or with your friends. So let's say in my example here, my side business, Laura Bloom Furniture. Shelly is also interested in joining me on this new adventure with the launch of Laura Bloom Furniture. So, but this brain also has my personal life information, all my regular day-to-day work for in the other area of my work in this particular brain that I've built out. So I am going to control-click on Laura Bloom Furniture. And on a Mac, you would command click, and that adds this thought into the selection box. Now, I can control click on random thoughts, just any thought, and then stop control, click around, start control clicking again to meticulously add thoughts into the selection box one by one. I can control click on a gate to add everything connected to that gate, or control click again. It's like a toggle switch on and off. And I can even control and drag. So I can go into an expanded view and control drag over large areas of thoughts. In this area, it's Laura Bloom and everything, maybe, gosh, now 5 or 6 generations down. It would be a lot to meticulously control click on. So with Laura Bloom Furniture, I'm going to start from scratch again. Laura Bloom Furniture is the only thought selected. I'll click on Edit and choose Select Related Thoughts. So now I'm telling the brain, select the current active thought, Laura Bloom Furniture, and childward down for, typically it's going to start with 1. The brain remembers the last time I did this, I selected 16 generations down. I don't think it goes much beyond 12 generations down, adding those to the selection box. So you can see I suddenly have 55 thoughts selected, and I can click through the brain, and anything selected has the little marching ants encapsulating the thought. So I've added those to the selection box. I can right click. There's a lot that you can do here. Now that you've selected these thoughts, if I'm turning this in as a report and I need a text document, I can select text outline. I can change the properties of this thought, changing all of their thought types, all of their thought tags all at once. So there's a lot of benefits to understanding this feature, more advanced feature of the brain. Today, we're focused on copying these thoughts. So I'm going to copy these 55 selected thoughts. So the first person that just wanted to copy a small group and paste into another brain, you now have those thoughts on your clipboard. You can paste them into that other brain in that specific area. For the person that wanted to create a new brain to share, I've copied those thoughts. I could have also deleted them if I'm no longer going to manage them from this brain. But I'm going to click on a new brain or file, create brain. There we go. So this is the brain I'll share with Shelly. It's my new woodworking brain.
Looking forward to it, Matt.
All right, this is going to be a big adventure. I'll paste those thoughts, and it pastes everything. I don't have a lot of content in this area of my brain, documents and web links and graphics and thought types and tags, but it would copy everything. In fact, if I go down under resources, there's that weekly status meeting, so it copied that, it selected, it kept it marked as private, etc. So everything is all there. And now I can sync this brain. That's step one, is to get it up online, syncing this brain to the cloud. Once it's synced to the cloud, shouldn't take too long there. It's a fairly small brain. There you go. I can go into online. Yeah, go ahead.
I think Wayne had a question about accessing brains on multiple devices. And I said, you got to do that through sync, because he has a desktop and a laptop and probably mobile. And then as part of that, I'm trying to get multiple questions in at once because we've got so many. Jack was wondering about the reliability of a backup, which is also the cloud services. So you're kind of on sync now. So just want to, Wayne, let you know this is how you do it also to get it on multiple machines, not just share with people. And Jack, this is your reliable backup. Once it's on our cloud, it's secure. And if you spill water on your laptop or whatever, you can always get it off the cloud. So with that, I'll let you.
Sure. There's so many different reasons that we sync our brains and that brain users choose to sync, whether it is just having that reliable backup. I can log in from another machine with my credentials, and I'll see that this brain in my brain list, let's close this. If I go to my brain list, I'll share a few things with you. Here's my new woodworking brain, and notice the little radio symbols. That is visually telling me that this particular brain is both online and being synced to the cloud. Here's my one brain for all. I just created that today. It's only local. If I scroll down, I'll find maybe a couple of brains with the little cloud picture. There's the brain support, a little cloud picture. So I've got some brains that are only on the cloud. I don't have on this machine. There's another one. So if I log in from another machine, I'll see that this is available on the cloud, and I can download and open this brain locally on that machine. So
Wayne jumped in and said he did want to share it with his students publicly. So we have a lot of teachers and professors that do that too. So this is another good way on the cloud. Maybe you don't even want them to download the software. You can actually publish it publicly and give them reader access. So you actually have a lot of options for sharing as well.
That's right. And so this particular brain, now that it's synced, it's still private. I'm still the only, Shelly does not have access to this brain yet. Now that I've synced it to the cloud, it's password protected. So from the brain, if I log in to the cloud, and it remembered my last log, oh, nope, there we go, log in. I haven't logged in recently. But now that I've logged into the brain, again, I've got a lot of brains out on the cloud, so I've got quite a long list. But my new woodworking is, there it is, new woodworking brain. So I'll launch that in the web browser as well. But this particular brain, like I said, it's only available to me right now. So when you sync a brain, it stays private. It's password protected. If you do want to know more about our securities, and we've got some great securities for brains, the upload, the storage, the download of brains, it's all encrypted using the same type of encryption used by the US government for classified documents. So we're more than happy to share the specifics with you on how secure your information is on the Brain Cloud. So, but it's still, again, only available to me. This is the URL if I decide to click this box and make it publicly accessible. Now that I've made it publicly accessible, I can click on save and share this URL with Shelly, with the world. I can tweet it out. You can also embed brains on your own website. So there's a lot that you can do with sharing a brain. Now, if I want Shelly to have a local copy of this brain on her desktop, maybe she's going to be traveling, she's going to be, she's flying to Australia, she's going to be in the air for 16 hours and wants to review this data. There's a lot of training information in this brain. Therefore, I am going to, down below, I can type in Shelly's email address, or Shelly's also using TeamBrain, so I'll talk about TeamBrain in just a moment, make Shelly a reader or a writer on this brain as well. So if I right click, I can say she's got read-only access. She can download a local copy, won't be able to add content. Right click, make her a writer of this brain. That's, again, if she's TeamBrain enabled, if we both are, she'll now have editor access and we're collaborating in the same brain. So again, many different tiers, many levels of accessibility to shared brains. And there's a lot more detail.
Typed into Jade's question was asking if we have enterprise version with like configurable permissions, read, write, different areas of brain. And so, yes, you could do that through TeamBrain services, giving people reader or editor. Multi-tiered access control, we are continuing to evolve. And that's continuing to evolve with new releases of TeamBrain. But definitely you can write in and get started on a trial, a free 30-day trial of TeamBrain, and play with how you want to set up your team and create a brain and see if those what we have works for you. But as Matt showed you, you can have people as editor, reader, and actually then create separate brains for different levels of access control as well.
That's right. And here I'm just pulling up as well. I'll also now have access on my cell phone. So there's that new woodworking brain. Notice it has the cloud icon. So it's still only available from the cloud, but I can download a local copy there onto my mobile device. So not only, some people like the syncing for the having the backup. Some people like the syncing for being able to share. Others, there we go. I just opened it up. Just simply want the mobile device. And so there I can, it's a little hard to do from behind. There we go. I can click and I can continue on because I am the owner, administrator of this brain. You can see down below, I can add notes at any time. So I can type in a few notes on any thought, add new thoughts, add content. And there on my desktop computer, you can see the online sync is or the automatic sync is kicking in. So any changes happening from the cloud, from my local device, from my iPhone, I'm syncing those and keeping them in sync on multiple devices through the Brain Cloud. So many, many different benefits to syncing your brain.
And we did have a question from an Android user, how to add content. And you can do that, and you can add content on your Android. However, we can't cover that on the webinar because I don't have an Android phone and it would look kind of weird, doing this into the webcam, but absolutely right into support. We could do a web meeting or a phone call and we can show you, you can absolutely add content and thoughts through your Android as well as your iOS devices. And it's a lot of fun as well. So do go ahead. We offer free support, complimentary support to all users, so take advantage of that. And then, yep. Matt, we had a question from Brendan about, can I merge multiple brains? And I don't know if you covered that when I was busy answering questions, but I guess there was a couple
You certainly
people
can.
That...
Yeah, you certainly can. It's a two-step process to merge two brains together. The first thing that I would need to do is to create a brain archive of the brain that is going to be merged into the master brain. So now that I've got this smaller lower bloom furniture brain, I'm going to create a brain archive. So I click on File and select to create brain archive. And brain archives are great for many different reasons. Once again, if you're not syncing to the cloud, but you still want that secure backup of different versions of the brain that you're building, or something to roll back to in case you're updating Windows or something like that. You want a secure backup of your brain, make a local brain archive, a BRZ file. So there's two different settings. I can keep the BRZ private. In other words, it can only be extracted back into my account when I'm logged into the app, or I can create a BRZ that anyone could extract. And I'll just keep this, I believe this is, yep, right on my
I'm
desktop.
so glad you're showing that, because Lisa just wrote in and said because of her company security practices, she can't use cloud services. What is the best way for her to back up her brain? And if you're on the Brain, it's the Brain Zip, but the Brain 9 is now called a Brain Archive. So Lisa, yes, what you're going to do that, and that's exactly what Matt's showing. I actually remember in the 90s, the days before like cloud, I used to carry a USB necklace with my brain.
Yeah.
When I was traveling on my Brain Zip. So yes, you can, if you can't use the cloud, which I totally recommend because it's dynamic, and you can just do the Brain Archive as well. So, and Matt's in the process of showing that. So
here's that BRZ that I just created. It by default creates it with the brain name and then the current date. So if you're creating incremental backups of your brains day to day, you can keep track of which one is the latest, greatest, or which one was created last Tuesday. So there's my Brain Zip, and now I can open yet another brain. I'll just click on File, New Brain. We'll call this New Team Brain. So a brain that I'm creating with going to be sharing with a much larger team. And notice also when you create a new brain, it randomly selects one of your existing wallpapers. Sort of a fun feature, introduces you to some of the great wallpapers that we've designed, some of our 20th anniversary wallpapers as well. Or you can go with just some classic light blue basic background. But close that window, you can always come back and change your wallpaper in your brain at any time. Now that I've created that Brain Zip, or that Brain Archive rather, I can, from my master brain that I'll be merging into, once again, I click on File, Import, and this time I'm selecting a Brain Archive, a BRZ. I'll select the file, which is right there on my desktop. So there's the new woodworking brain, and select Open. Now it's telling me right now this brain already exists because I have the radio button for creating a new brain. So I want to add this into my existing brain and then import that BRZ. So there, the brain that was copied out of brain number 1 created a new brain with that brain. Then I copied it again and imported it into another new existing brain. So many different ways for you to segment brains out into topics.
Import of an import.
Yes, or imports, and I've imported the same data here.
We can keep going and going and going. And actually, just to go backwards, Michael has asked a question: how do I move my Brain 8 maps into the Brain 9? So here we're going to.
Sure.
I guess that's a very common question. So thanks for asking. Came in a little bit earlier in the session, where yes, that's of course a very important import. So we'll cover that real quick for the group as well.
2 different ways that you can import your version 8 brains. That is through the original. If you've got on this machine, you've just installed the Brain 9, you're checking it out. Brain 9 application does not overwrite version 8, so you'll have the 2 on your machine at the same time. You can see here the round logo that you see on my desktop. That's version 8 of the brain, and here's version 9, the square lighter colors. So I'm running 8 and 9 on this machine at the same time. So I have some version 8 brains. I can click on File and select Import. So when you install 9, your brains don't magically turn into version 9 databases. They're still, if you double click on them, they're going to open up in version 8 of the brain. Now I've installed 9. I maybe imported a sample brain, kicked the tires, and I decided, yeah, version 9 is for me. I want to import convert all my version 8 databases into version 9. It's a manual process, brain by brain. The typical user doesn't have more than 2 or 3 different brains. I'm and Shelly and I are sort of unicorns in that scenario, in that we've got so many different sample brains or brains that we share with other people in the brain community or our colleagues at the brain. So it's a pretty simple and quick process to use the default selection on File, Import, and you're importing either a brain zip, or you can point to the existing .brain file. With version 8, you had a .brain file and an _brain folder, which is where the database was. Wasn't quite as secure and stable and reliable as version 9. So we can select this option, select file, and there's the brain zip I imported earlier, but I can manually navigate onto my C drive and look in my directory where I used to keep version 8 brains here in my brain. So there's all my version 8 brains, and I can select one of these Scout Laboratories.brain and open. And that brain's already been imported. I'm going to import this into now my existing brain. And you can see it's going through the process. It has to actually scan that data and get the database ready to be imported. So it's processing that content. And in just a moment, I'll be able to click on import and import. I guess I selected a fairly large brain to import. But after, there it is. I now get the import button.
This is the MegaBrain session map.
There you go. So it takes just a moment to scan through that data. And yes, I do want to import. And it's interesting that I picked this brain too, because actually there was, and it's just saying one attachment, it connected it in another location. There was a shortcut to a file that no longer existed that the brain tried to recover for you, but it was deleted and no longer there. So regardless, I have imported that version 8 brain into my existing version 9 brain that I had open. And once again, all the files, you can see the notes, all the documents, all the thought types and tags have been imported from 8 into 9. And it's interesting that I bring this brain in because the question came up about having a medical industry or pharmaceutical type of brain. Yeah, so this is my pharmaceutical brain. And the interesting thing about this brain, I'll share this with you really quickly, is you can see under medications, the background doesn't lend itself well to these colors. So I'm going to change the brain theme really quickly, and I'll make this the dark blue. There we go. But I'm just going to select one of my different products. So you can see when I mouse over, this is a pharmaceutical brain. This brain was actually created with someone in the pharmaceutical industry. I changed all the product names and file names, obviously, so I could demo the product. But this is how they keep track of their data. And the benefit here is, let's say they get a call from a distributor that wants to know about distributing dialoxin. And you can see when I mouse over, it is FDA approved for heart and valve disease. It is FDA approved for atrial fibrillation. This one isn't. Let's get a non-Vastor. Here we go. We've got one that's FDA approved and one that's non-FDA approved. So the link labels here and the link types that I'm using are actually giving me additional information about how it's connected with other medications, whether it's in clinical trials, whether it's FDA approved, FDA non-approved. Here's a great example. The person wants to know what we can do for our patients for coronary artery disease. Well, if they're calling from the US, we're a distributor of LifeRx. So we can click on that thought and open up the label and start talking to them about the context. They're calling from the US, so I cannot share with them non-FDA approved OneMed. If they were calling from Canada or from somewhere else, maybe I could click on that thought and start sharing some information. So the link labels in this particular brain are what's providing the additional context. Another more advanced feature, something that we didn't get a chance to talk about today, but a good example of the brain in a pharma industry and how the relationships between pieces of information are being visualized in context within the structure of the brain.
And that's right, link types, and that's just another level of semantic data. We talked about types and tags for thoughts, but of course the link types can also add additional meaning to your brain. And then we have a question from Jocelyn. When there is a note and the web pages don't show, all I see is the note. Is there an option to view web pages while hovering? So I guess she wants to see, even though she has a note, more of the web page. And I'm just going to read the second question because it's sort of related to tabs as well. Then Jane has asked, she'd like a complete explanation of how the tabs work. I have many different documents and topics I want to track. How can tabs help? So we can spend a little bit of time on how you can move the brain around and configure the tabs, I think a lot of people have asked a few questions in that regard.
Sure, sure. So a couple of things. First off, when you click on a thought, and here's one of my thoughts, to be filed. So my to be filed thought, and this is, once again, we're back in my own personal brain. This is a thought that I can quickly get to. I click on the home thought and just jump over to be filed. So if I'm seeing something online or doing some research or what have you, and in this case, it's really random stuff. So please don't worry about the content. It's important to me, but, and it's about, it looks like I've got some URLs on auto body filler versus welding versus, just different types of techniques for auto body fillers, and also sort of a map of an electrical chart for an old 71 bus. So just some random content that I need to get into my brain. I want to watch those videos and learn about them. I'll file them away later. I just drag and drop them here onto my to be filed thought. So it's got some random content. I think I typically, on the notes, I'll just type in really quickly what it is. Maybe I find another website, and it's all about, cat rescues.
All right.
In my area. Yeah, so just whatever the content is, I'm interested in that. And so I drag and drop, or I'm just typing in a note, something that I want to research later. Someone tells me, oh, there's a great place to go camping in northern Idaho. Oh, okay, great. I'll check that out. Camping in northern. I know nothing about camping in northern Idaho. So I just drop that information into the brain. And this is sort of a thought I go to later to flush out some ideas or grab some content that I dragged and dropped into my brain and file it in the right location. Okay, so regardless, what I have are some notes and 3 different random attachments on this content. Now, when I click on the thought, I just click, it's going to default over to the notes. If I click on any of the content, then let's see, when I click on the thought, I think actually, it does come back to the notes. So I do need to click on the tab to load up that URL or load up that video or web page, what have you. Many times people have set up their attachments as a list, so they can see the attachments down below or what the attachments are, and then their notes up above. I would do this in a brain if I didn't necessarily need to launch the entire document, but I just need a summary of what those documents are. Version 1 has the screenshots from company X. Version 2 has the screenshots from company Y. So my notes sometimes give me additional context about all my different attachments. But my preference really is to use attachments as a tab. Yeah, and that way I can it's just an extra click and I can preview that content. But it's not going to, if I do turn on, now there is an option, let me go up to options and preferences. You can turn on, when you hover over a thought on the UI tab, update display on hover. Yeah.
Go into the UI tab and have a field day, because I know everyone has a preference for drag and drop. Do that, and then the hover is really cool. I'm glad you asked that question.
Yeah, the hover now allows me, when I hover over Matt Caton, you can see it loads up my note on Matt Caton, or I load up Laura Broom Furniture, I hover over it, it loads up the note. But once again, to open the content, open the tab that's associated with that content or with that thought, you would actually need to click and then click on that file attachment. Now, for that reason, I typically, for the most part, I had to find a thought where I've got multiple file attachments. For the most part, when I have a thought, and here in this area of my brain, I'll just go into wood resources. Instead of just attaching these 3 different Home Depot, Menards, Kettle Moraine hardwoods as URLs on this one thought, notice I keep them on separate thoughts, because Kettle Moraine hardwoods also falls under, they sell marine grade hardwood. which
And
not
now you
all
can
place
URL,
yourself.
of course, as
Yeah, so
well.
I've got
Right
one
there.
URL, one file attachment for that thought, and anything that it's related to is going to be linked elsewhere in my brain. So a few different scenarios, and you just simply need to find the settings and the process that works best for you.
All right, great. And we're kind of on the edge of the time here, so just a couple more questions. Thanks for everyone for bearing with us. Jane had a very interesting information architecture question. I have a number of historical interviews in which interviews talk about real estate projects or land use issues or specific laws. Is there a way I can note which of these issues have been discussed in which interview? And so this is one of those things that there's so many ways to slice the pie, but I think if you have specific attributes like that you want to track, thought tags are the way to go.
Oh, yeah.
So we can just spend maybe a couple more. I touched on it a little bit, but so this way, let's say you have an interview, you could tag it historical land use, and then you just click on that tag. Every interview I've ever done that's mentioned historical land use would appear. Now you could also create a thought called historical land use and connect them all, but where a tag differs from a connection is maybe you don't want to see all those links. So if you want it's just a sort of sub attribute, use the tags for discovery, or you can use thought connections. And I don't know if you have anything to add in terms of that or advice for Jane in this regard.
Yeah, and I'll show you really quickly how it would look. Let's say here in my brain, I just want to tag everything that I have discussed in my company meeting. I want to discuss everything, but I just want to tag as I discuss it with my new employees. Has the catalog been discussed yet? Has history been discussed yet? Thought tags is perfect. So I'm going to click on this thought and add a new tag called discussed. That is a new tag. And I can actually go visit that tag. So let's say by default, it's just a little tag icon. I really like doing this. When I do use tags, I give it a little icon, a visual icon. So select from my stock library what means it's been discussed. Well, a green check, that's perfect. So Shelly and I had our first company meeting for our new furniture company today. First thing we talked about was what's in our catalog and the pricing. Is it all on point? So I'm going to right click on catalog and apply the thought tag. That has been discussed. And pricing, right click, or again, you can click on the thought, then click to open up the thought properties, apply the thought tag, discussed. So many different ways to accomplish that. I can see those two have been discussed. What are we going to talk about at our next meeting? Probably the people within the company, maybe the customers, the distributors, start going into different places where we buy our resources, etc. When something gets discussed, it's sort of like checking it off the list in this case. You just simply apply that thought tag. And many people use their thought tags as a sort of a business process, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You can use thought tags that way as well and just change it from pending discussion to the thought tag completed discussion, etc. So many different uses for those thought tags. That's a great example there.
Great. And with that, I think we're going to have to end today's session. We are well over. Usually we've gone as far as 30 minutes. We're now 35 minutes into overtime. That being said, I know there were some questions that we haven't answered. What we offer the complimentary support, so feel free to chat any questions you still have into our website through support, email us, or tomorrow, Matt is doing the Brain 101. It's at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern time, and it's a smaller class size, so we can probably demo 100% of your questions, and you can even just pop in to the end of that, because I understand you may not want to sit through another session, but if you do, we're going to build a brain from ground up. So new users, if you're like, wow, I'm like totally overwhelmed, you've showed brains that are huge, then go ahead and join our session tomorrow. And with that, I think we're going to close today's. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us for this mega session on no limits mind mapping, which seems to have no time limit either. But before we do end, Matt, do you have any other words of wisdom for users on how to create that one brain that rules them all?
Great. Well, hopefully we've demoed today that you can go back and make those modifications. You can change how a brain is structured, divvied up into segmented brains or merge two brains together. So you can always go back, run your reports, make modifications to thoughts, and two areas of your brain. So have no fear. Get right in there and start creating that mega brain. And thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have a great day.